Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Vedanta Center on this beautiful, crisp, clear morning. We are very pleased to welcome Swami Arupeshananda today. He is with us from the Hollywood Center. Swami joined the order in 2002. He took brahmachari vows in 2008 and sannyasa vows in 2012. Now, Swami grew up in the Vedanta Center, which is pretty amazing to me. His parents were attending before he was even born. And he grew up with Swami Prabhavananda, which is very exciting to many of us. And so I've had the great pleasure of hearing a couple of stories about Swami Prabhavananda over breakfast. While we laughed and he tried the failed biscuits, just one bite, just so that we could have that experience, and then we had better biscuits for breakfast. But today he told me a story about Swami, and some of you may have heard it before, but I have not. And he said that Swami P had to have hernia surgery, and that the doctors, for some reason, told him he could not have anesthesia. And so that's a pretty delicate area, hernia surgery is in the groin. And so he says they put the knife in him and the pain was intense. And at first, Swami was trying to, do it with mind control. And then he decided to go into the pain as Brahman. How did you word it? Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, just a couple of things. The surgery was in like the 1950s. So they had some reasons, it's probably outdated for why they couldn't use anesthesia. But yeah, the idea was pain is Brahman. As pleasure is Brahman, sarvam kalvidam Brahma. All this is verily Brahman, right? Go ahead.
So Swami, goes into the pain and he falls asleep. And he wakes up and there's a sheet over his head. And he's telling some nuns and other people this story later, and they said, Swami, they don't put a sheet over your head when you go to sleep. They put it over your head when you're dead. So he actually must have died on the table. He was so, and I think you said they asked him, Swami, were you in samadhi? And then he was trapped. He had to admit yes, or he had to acknowledge.
He did. He admitted yes. After a long silence, he admitted he was in samadhi.
So he literally flatlined on the table. And I had never heard the story. Have you guys heard that story?
I told them at the table. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So we're really grateful to welcome Swami Arupeshananda to speak to us today.
And I should just add that when he woke up, he pulled the sheet down, because what's the sheet doing over my head? So he pulls it down, and the nurse is in the room, screams and runs away because she thought he was dead. Om Asato Ma Samgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityoma Amritam Gamaya Avir Ma Edhim Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukam Te Namam Pahinityam Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Reach us through and through ourselves, O Lord, and protect us evermore with your loving presence. Om. Peace, peace, peace.
Sandy, quickly, I'd like to invite everybody to silence their cell phones. We had cell phones go off 3 times yesterday morning. So I would just forget. So if you wouldn't mind just checking. Thank you.
Hi, so my name is Swami Arupeshananda, and the title of today's talk is Navigating Knowledge and Devotion. I was thinking this morning as I looked it over, probably a better title would have been Knowing and Loving, because that's what I really want to talk about. And I want to talk about how they kind of get in each other's way sometimes. It seems like our desire for knowledge sometimes prevents us from following the path of devotion. What is the path of devotion? The very first line of the Imitation of Christ says, "Whoever follows me shall not walk in darkness, says the Lord." Whoever follows me shall not walk in darkness, says the Lord. Very first line of the book. In other words, we are being invited to walk the path of devotion, to walk the path of love, if we wish not to walk in darkness. And there's a whole book of advice that follows on just how to do this. But the sad truth is that we don't want to do this. Why not? Because it's religion. And what does religion tell us? Religion tells us to be good, to be kind, to be unselfish, to be self-sacrificing, to practice spiritual disciplines, to practice yoga, to sit quietly and meditate. In other words, to do a bunch of things that sound like no fun because they're good for us. All these fun things, these things are no fun, but you should do them because they're good for you. And religion also tells us not to lie, not to cheat, not to steal, not to rise at the expense of another, not to indulge in our guilty pleasures. In other words, all those fun things that you're doing, stop those things. They're bad for you. This is what religion tells us. Eat your vegetables, stop eating that cheesecake. Nobody wants to do this. We want to keep eating cheesecake, and we do. Even when we realize that cheesecake isn't good for us, it's not that easy to give up our cheesecake, whatever form it takes. Sri Ramakrishna compares this to the camel that eats thorny plants and keeps eating thorny plants until its mouth bleeds and still won't give up eating thorny plants. I had a personal experience with this, I guess it was in the last few months. An acquaintance, I don't really know him, but I know his story. He married, had a daughter, babies, living in Seattle, and I think she was maybe 1 or 2 years old. And he's got a job and all that, a career. The love of his life, the sweetheart in the 12th grade who dumped him and broke his heart, gets divorced and comes to him and says, "I want you back." And all of his friends and family and everyone says, "Don't do this. This woman is just looking to you to recover from her divorce, and then she's going to cast you aside after she's finished with you." Even his parents get in on this and tell him, "Don't do this." Well, he doesn't listen to anyone and he does it. And of course, she does exactly what they said she was going to do. She, for a while, and then that's it. She's finished with it. Somehow or other, he manages to get his wife and child back after this escapade. I don't know how he did that. I would imagine the wife put up with this for the sake of the child, but I don't know. So some years go by and then he starts drinking. And the drinking becomes a problem. And at this point, the wife has had enough of it. No more of this man, and kicks him out of the house. And he goes to a rehab center to overcome his addiction. And he gets told in the rehab center what everybody gets told in the rehab center now, which is meditate. That is the only way you will overcome your addiction, is through meditation. So that's where I come in. He knows that I've been living in this monastery and doing this weird stuff for all these decades. And so let's hear what this guy has to say about meditation. So we start talking about it. And it becomes clear very quickly that he's willing to consider some of these mindfulness techniques, the Buddhist techniques that don't involve God, but anything that has the slightest odor of devotion, he will categorically reject. Even in his current state, having completely ruined his life by indulging in cheesecake, he still has some standards below which he will not stoop, namely God. He will not stoop so low as to admit the possibility that he could give his heart to a supreme being. This is something that is done by ignorant fanatics. They're the only kinds of people who don't have the brains enough to realize that there is no God. Maybe these meditation techniques work because people have been doing them for thousands of years. There must be something to them, but this God business, we have outgrown this. We are too sophisticated for this. And so we find such people, although they abhor religious devotion, what they wind up doing is giving their devotion every bit as fanatical to something else. Entertainment people, sports figures, YouTube influencers, that's the new thing. And we can become crazed with these people. We can give so much of our devotion to one of these idols that we lose our balance. How many stalkers has Taylor Swift had? I don't know. But these people, they have to get a court order. A judge has to tell them, you must stay 100 yards away from Taylor Swift because you can't control yourself. You've lost your balance. And it happens also in the political realm, except it's not so much idols, it's more ideals. My side, although there's some sort of cult thing around Trump, some people have that. But mostly for politicians, it's politics that we get fanatical about. And it becomes a kind of scripture to us. Our opinion becomes a kind of scripture, and we feel fanatical about our position on an issue. And then the people who have opposing opinions on this issue are demonized. There was a story in newspaper a couple of years ago where a man in Ohio shot and killed his neighbor because he suspected him of being a Democrat. The irony was he actually turned out to be a Republican, but apparently he was acting too democratic. And so he shot and killed him. And I don't want to point on one side because there's fanaticism on both sides. But this is actually one of the reasons that I think Sri Ramakrishna's message is so important for this age. He's got a few messages, but this one message, religious harmony and religious tolerance, I feel is so important right now. And you say, why? Didn't you just mention that all these people that you're talking about have no interest in religion, have no interest in religious ideals? Yes, that's true. On the other hand, for all of us here, until we realize the truth of religion, until we understand that truth for ourselves, religion is an opinion. I have an opinion about God. I have an opinion about how spiritual life should be pursued. I have an opinion about how spiritual people should look and act, the clothes they should wear. These are all opinions. And so this religious harmony and religious tolerance is a tolerance of opinions. We have to tolerate other opinions. And so that's why this message of religious harmony, even though we live in a society which is largely secular, and the demographic I'm talking about here is stubbornly so, nevertheless, there is a broader implication to this religious harmony message that Sri Ramakrishna gives. And it also hits us here, even those of us here who are religious and who are devoted and who are trying, however imperfectly, to make God the supreme ideal of our lives. Still, this message has relevance for us. Why? Because people come to religion in general, and especially Vedanta, from all different kinds of backgrounds. You get people from different cultures, different educational levels, different economic levels, different ethnicities, different backgrounds, so many and varied temperaments. In other walks of life, this isn't so pronounced. At least when I was in the orchestra, there was a certain, there's variations, of course, but there's a certain type of person that becomes a classical musician. When I did judo, there's a certain kind of person that likes to fight. There's variations, of course, and some people like it more than others. Academics. I was in academics. There's a certain kind of person who becomes a physics nerd. There's variations within that, but religion may come from all sides. God is so huge of a concept that he attracts people from all different walks of life. And then we find ourselves in this building and we have to get along. We have to get a religious harmony means getting along with each other here for us. That's what it means for us. And one of the amazing things about this situation where we naturally rub elbows with each other and feel the abrasion of different cultures and personalities and education levels and ways of operating, there's one thing we have to remember. We have to remember that in this one instance, Arjuna is right and Krishna is wrong. What does it mean? Arjuna gave basically the Sermon on the Mount speech to Sri Krishna in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. Turn the other cheek, resist not evil. Whosoever shall sue thee at the law and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. Whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain. Give to him that asketh of thee. All that Christ says in the Sermon on the Mount. And Arjuna gives a speech very similar to this. We were just talking about this in the walk yesterday. Arjuna gives a speech very similar to this to Krishna in the Gita. And Krishna doesn't say, oh, wow, Arjuna, you're so spiritual. Krishna says, you're a coward. Get out there and fight. And that's what we have to do in life. We cannot observe Christ's teachings to the letter in our worldly life. Why? As many people have pointed out, if the good people of the world resisted not evil, what would happen to society? It would collapse. The evil people would simply run amok. They would take away all the stuff from the good people, and the good people would turn the other cheek, and there would be no more civilization. So we have this idea that we cannot really practice Christ's teachings out there in the world because we have to pay rents, we have to advance our careers, we have to provide for our families, we have to do all these things for our survival, so we think. In here, in this Vedanta Center of Atlanta, none of those things are on the line. You can come here and practice perfect non-resistance of evil. You can turn the other cheek and be insulted repeatedly here, and it means nothing. The only thing that gets hurt is your ego. That's it. It does not threaten your rent. It does not threaten your marriage. It does not threaten your career or your children or anything. Whatever friction we find in this place is squarely aimed at our ego. And so here, unlike out there, we have this wonderful opportunity to actually practice Jesus's teachings right down to the letter. Out there, you have to be Arjuna. You've got to fight. There's a reason for it. In here, we have a haven. It still smarts when somebody says something to you that you don't like, but it doesn't really threaten you. You have to remember that. So that was actually a bit of a digression. But I was on to people and their fanatic tendencies, how they give their devotion to various things. We did politics, and I talked about the importance of Sri Ramakrishna's message of harmony. It isn't just entertainment idols and political positions that we become fanatical about. Maybe we realize that our entertainment idol is acting like an idiot and maybe shouldn't be so idealized, or our politicians are corrupt and perhaps we don't idealize them so much. But maybe we idealize their position, what they have. We idealize their fame or their money, something like that, their power, their prestige. We want it for ourselves. There's a wonderful story about this. You all know who Matthew Perry is.
Yes.
Okay, I never saw the show, but you couldn't not know who he was. He was this super famous guy on this show called Friends on TV, which I never saw, but still I knew who he was. And before he landed the character of Chandler, I think the name was Chandler. Before he landed the name of the character of Chandler on the TV show, he was a struggling actor, and he was reading a story about another peer of his, Charlie Sheen, who's another famous actor. Probably some of you have heard of him. His father was an actor. He's been in all kinds of stuff. This is back in the 90s, before Friends started. Charlie Sheen's life was a complete train wreck. He was destroying himself with drugs and prostitutes and jail and rehab and making a fool out of himself every week on the tabloids. I mean, I didn't really pay too much attention to the guy, except you go shopping at the grocery store and there he is being an idiot on the cover of every single tabloid. So Matthew Perry is reading about this. And he thinks to himself, after reading all these terrible things that Charlie Sheen is doing to himself, he thinks, yeah, but what does he care? He's famous. In other words, he had this idea, this ideal of fame that was going to protect him from his inner demons and the outer demons. Life. It would protect him from the ups and downs of life. If he could only be famous, this was his idea. And he got down on his knees at that moment. And he had never prayed before in his life, he said. He got down on his knees and prayed, "Dear God, just make me famous. I don't care what else you do with me."
Wow.
1 week later, he got the role of Chandler on Friends. This is straight out of the Bhagavad Gita. Sri Krishna says, most people worship the devas in order to achieve their worldly ends. This kind of prayer can be answered very quickly here on this earth. 1 week, he got the job. And of course, we know what happened. It didn't save him from his inner demons. He destroyed himself. From the spiritual standpoint, I mean, from the worldly standpoint, it's a tragedy. Poor guy. It is a tragedy. From the spiritual standpoint, we're here to learn. And he learned a valuable lesson. At least in Eastern thinking, next time he won't think that. He comes back here and he actually said, I realized at some point that this wasn't solving the problem. Fame, what he said was, fame didn't fill the hole. That's how he put it. So that's a valuable lesson. He paid for it with his life. So we have these ideals, even if we think that we're too sophisticated for devotion. There is something in us that will have some kind of ideal and strive for that ideal. And you think, well, I know people who have no interest in politics, no interest in sports or movies or any of this stuff. They are too busy with food, sex, and money to think about anything else. And they have none of these issues. But even then, we find that such people will have a food idol, a famous chef, or someone who can eat 50 hot dogs or whatever they do, or a sex symbol, or a entrepreneur or super businessman who made it big. There is something, constitutional elements in the human psyche that will form an ideal and strive to realize that ideal. We have this. Whether we like it or not, we have this in us. We will find an ideal and we will strive to realize that ideal. And so, in the imitation of Christ, the Lord says, if you would not walk in darkness, make me your ideal. Follow me, make me your ideal, and you will not walk in darkness, says the Lord. First line of the book. So maybe after grudgingly trying everything else, fame, money, and all the rest of it, this person, this career, that career, prestige, whatever, we finally decide maybe I should try to walk this path of devotion. Maybe I'm not too sophisticated to try this. Maybe I've been beaten around enough where I'm ready to start this journey. And so we turn to religion and we pick up a scripture. And what does it say in the Bhagavad Gita? The Lord is everywhere and always perfect. Now, wait a minute. I just rejected all this stuff. I just found that politicians are corrupt, celebrities act like fools, all these career options either end in frustration or disillusionment. Nothing is really filling the hole, and this is all perfect. And for what it's worth, we believe this line of the Gita, the Lord is everywhere and always perfect. I used to, when I was living in the monastery in Trabuco, I would poll people. I'd even get them in the parking lot sometimes. I wanted to see, did we actually believe this statement? The Lord is everywhere and always perfect. So I asked as many people as I could over months and years, what do you think? Bhagavad Gita says this, what do you think? Everyone immediately agreed. No one even had to think about it. They never said, well, maybe, I'm not sure, nothing, or maybe he's not quite perfect. No. We cannot really put up with anything less. Our God has got to be everywhere and always perfect. But what are the implications? What are the implications of that? It means all this insanity, the war, the famine, the disasters, the idiotic celebrities, the failed careers, the ruined marriages, all these things are perfect. How does that make any sense? I was going to try and walk this path of devotion, and the first thing I do is pick up this piece of scripture, and I can't understand it, and it is interfering with my progress on this path of devotion. In other words, my desire for knowledge is getting in the way of my walk for the Lord. I wanted to walk with the Lord, and I read this scripture, and I can't make any sense out of it, and I want to make sense out of this world, out of my life experience. I want to connect the dots. How can I connect the dots here? So we look around for some other scriptures and we find basically the same thing everywhere. Some religion is going to tell you somewhere that this is all perfect and beautiful and wonderful and everything's fine. And it's all in just perfect order, not a leaf blows, except by the will of Rama. This is a famous passage from the Old Testament, the book of Ecclesiastes, where King Solomon gives actually a kind of detailed defense of the Lord's activities in this world. He says, for everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to find and a time to lose, a time for war and a time for peace. He has made everything beautiful in its time. King Solomon says he has made everything beautiful in its time. And of course, we can't make any sense out of this. And we try and try and try. And we have various coping mechanisms we put forth to deal with our inability to understand this world. I know there was one person in the lab I worked with at UCLA, very smart guy, and a Mormon. I don't know if you're familiar with Mormon theology. It's difficult to swallow. I've read some of their stuff, and you read it and you think, this is a tough sell. I would have a hard time buying into this. And so somehow, I was in the monastery and he was a Mormon, and Mormons, in my experience, have been beautiful people, very open-minded and willing to talk and accepting and all that. And so we could talk religion a little bit without getting irritated with each other. And he said, I asked him, how can you do this? I mean, you're a scientist, you're a physicist in this laboratory, and you're a bright guy. And what's this book saying? And how can you do that? He had this idea that the empirical physical world was here in one box and the spiritual world was over here in another box. He had completely compartmentalized his reality. There's a secular life that makes sense in a certain way, and there is a spiritual life that is a mystery of God that I'm never going to understand. And he just went through a sort of divided life like that. There was another one. That's one approach. We just put it in a box. I don't get it. I'm never going to get it. It's God's mysterious will, and that's it. And so I'm putting it over here. The other approach, one other approach, of course, fundamentalism. Empirical evidence is wrong. Science is wrong. The Bible is right, or whatever my scripture is right. That's it. And I will close my eyes and go, nah. What if anybody ever says science to me? That's another approach that we take to this. Then there's the full frontal assault, where we try and we are going to take both these things head on and make them get married. There was actually one girl she's now a professor of astronomy at Purdue. But back then she was into apologetics. She was going to reconcile quantum field theory with the Genesis creation myth. Now, quantum field theory is very complicated. The math is brutal. And now what you're going to do is you're going to take this brutal math and try and fit it into this 6,000-year time frame. So, I mean, she was bright. She went to Caltech as an undergrad and all that, but still, I don't know who could do that. And eventually, actually, for this talk, I looked her up on YouTube yesterday to see sort of where she was with this stuff. And I think she's softened her position. She just can't do it. And now she's kind of going in another direction. But we haven't given up. Even though we know this is impossible. From a certain standpoint, you could say CERN, the big collider in Switzerland. This is our desire to know everything. From the Upanishads, it says this brilliant question. Trying to know everything one thing at a time is hopeless. And the Upanishad, I think it's Chandogya, I don't remember, says, what is that knowing which nothing else remains to be known? It's a brilliant question.
Yeah.
Just to actually have that question occur to you is pretty impressive. The idea that there could be a thing knowing which nothing else remains to be known. If you have this one thing that you know, everything else is understood. That idea itself requires a great amount of maturity, it seems to me. And yet we are also pursuing this in the material realm at CERN. And the irony is that we know we can never get there. This is never going to work. They got the so-called God particle, the Higgs boson in 2012. What that did is it helped us, there's four forces. I'm going to geek out with physics here a little bit. There's four forces: gravitational, electromagnetic, strong and weak nuclear. They managed to get their sort of unification of two of them a little better in hand with the so-called God particle, the Higgs boson. So they managed to unify sort of, or at least convince themselves that there is a coherent unification between two of the four forces. Now you could say there's three forces. Well, what we would really like to do is have one force, the force, like Star Wars. One force, the force, like Star Wars, and one particle that really would be the God particle that mediates that force. We'd like to find that particle, get it in our lab. This, every physicist knows, will never happen, at least according to our current theories. Why? because you would have to reach a temperature of 10 to the 32 Fahrenheit. That's hotter than the hottest quasar in the universe. It's 1 followed by 32 zeros. The last time that temperature was reached was 10 to the minus 43 seconds after the Big Bang. Essentially, the Big Bang, basically. I mean, 10 to the minus 43 seconds is nothing. So the instant of the Big Bang, effectively, was the last time that temperature was reached. No one in this universe is ever going to build a particle collider that can reach that temperature. This is never going to happen. And yet, what do we want to do? Build a bigger particle collider. That's what we want to do, because we can't stop this search. We can't stop not wanting to know. There's something, just as there is a constitutional element in our nature that says you will have an ideal and strive for that ideal, so there is a constitutional element in our nature that says you will strive to know. You will strive to understand. Even in the face of impossible odds, you will strive to understand this universe. Can't help it. Why not? What is this? Why do we do this? Again, King Solomon, of all people, he says, God has set eternity in the human heart. That's his way of putting it. Christ says, behold, the kingdom of heaven is within you. Perfection is what Vedanta says, is within each one of us, buried in our consciousness under what they call upadis, these limiting adjuncts, these ideas of male, female, tall, short, fat, thin, all these things we have. Underneath all of this secondary baloney that we put on top of the self, underneath all that, this self is perfect and eternal and unchanging, and is what we are trying to find in all of our looks out there, whether it's for fame or money or the God particle or anything else. What we are trying to find is this perfection that we already have within us. This is the Vedantic teaching. And so we can't help not wanting to know, but we're asking the wrong question. To try and know one thing at a time, understand one election at a time, or one divorce at a time, or one rehab at a time, to try and understand all these things one thing at a time is never going to work. We have to try and know that, knowing which nothing else remains to be known. That's what we have to try and figure out. And so how do we do that? Sri Krishna says, he gives us the answer in the Gita, chapter 7. Devote your whole mind to me and practice yoga. Take me for your only refuge. I will tell you how. By doing this, you can know me in my total reality without any shadow of doubt. I will give you all this knowledge and direct spiritual experience besides. When a man has that, nothing else remains to be known. When a man has that, nothing else remains to be known. So in other words, know the incarnation. Sri Krishna says, me, know me, devote yourself to me. As the Lord says in the Imitation of Christ, follow me. According to the Bhagavad Gita, that is one me. There is one me. There is no two me's to follow. There's only one me to follow. He says, famously in the Gita, when goodness grows weak, when evil increases, I make myself a body. In every age, I return to destroy the sin of the sinner, to establish righteousness, and to deliver the holy. This is what he does in every age. And he comes with a particular message in each age, it is said, that is appropriate for that age, which is why I brought up earlier this message of harmony that Sri Ramakrishna brings in this age, which is not really new. It goes actually back very long time ago to the Rig Veda, where truth is one, sages call it by various names. This idea of one, actually it says existence is one. There is one existence, ekam sat. Existence is one, sages call it by various names. All this multiplicity that we see is not the real thing. The real thing is one existence. And that one existence, according to this teaching, manifests itself again and again for our welfare. To me, this has always seemed like an eminently reasonable proposition, a good working hypothesis for our spiritual life. The idea that God showed up once, that the Christians have, and that's it, and you missed the boat and it's over, has never really seemed reasonable to me. That was it in this whole big universe. I mean, you think about how unlikely that is now. We've got 100 billion stars in this galaxy and 100 billion galaxies. Think about that for a second. That's a lot of numbers in the night sky that we can see. And as we know, we've been looking at these planets. These stars all have planets around them. And this is actually just the visible universe, which according to modern cosmology is perhaps an infinitesimal fraction of what's actually out there. So this is basically unthinkably large. Now, do we really think that this happened once in one little speck of dust here in this part of the universe? This does not seem reasonable. What's more reasonable is that there's life all over the place and God's going from one place to the other, busy with all these things, with all these people getting confused again and again, constantly reincarnating in one world and another, saving people from making stupid mistakes all the time, everywhere. That to me seems a lot more reasonable than this one and done thing. Or the Jewish one where he hasn't come yet, we're still waiting for him, that one. Neither of these seem particularly reasonable to me. Instead, this idea that Sri Krishna gives, that I come again and again, and that Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, Ramakrishna, all these Chaitanya incarnations is one, coming again in different window dressings, but the light shining through the window is one. The light shining through the window is what matters. The window dressing is what attracts us for that particular age and climate and temperament of the people and the message they need. And then we get this message and then we get confused and forget, and then he comes back and fixes things again. I like this. Okay, so how do we find him? How do we know him? He says, devote yourself to me. How do we do that? How do we know this, knowing which nothing else remains to be known? He says, beautiful translation. I've seen this translated in different ways. I'm very fond of this one. It's Swami Prabhavananda's translation. He says, to love is to know me. To love is to know me, my innermost nature, the truth that I am. To love is to know me, my innermost nature, the truth that I am. One of the things I love about this translation is he does not say to love me is to know me, which is actually closer to the original Sanskrit. But Swami Prabhavananda said to love is to know me. Why is that so significant? Why did he choose that? Because what we do with our love is we confuse that feeling of love, that awareness of love that we get from time to time with the object that has inspired it. I gave the example yesterday of seeing an old devotee in Portland last weekend, and this love feeling just kind of welled up in me. And I forgot everything. I forgot myself. I forgot the other person. I just had this love feeling. But then that doesn't last. It goes. And then you think, oh yeah, this person is what I love. And it doesn't have to be a person. I mean, it happens, of course, with sweethearts all the time, or even a car. You can love a car. You get a new car and there's this welling up of love. And then the car doesn't do this right and that right. And I wanted this and they gave me that. And then it starts to break down and you have to get another car. And because do you want the car? No, you want the love. But we've gotten confused and we've projected our love onto the car. And so we have to buy car after car after car. And a sweetheart, we love the sweetheart, but actually it's love that we want. And we think, okay, I love the sweetheart. It's starting to fade. Let's have a family and make more love and get a dog and a house and a beautiful yard. And it'll all be love. And we'll try and increase our love that way. And our love adds to our desire 100-fold because of this. Car after car, thing after thing in the house, trying to keep this love going. And so we find that what we're trying to do, just like we were trying to know one thing at a time and to know everything that way, we are trying to love one thing at a time and love everything that way. This doesn't work. Just as there is something knowing which nothing else remains to be known, so there is something loving which nothing else remains to be loved.
Mhm.
This is how we harmonize these two paths. The knowledge gets in the way of the love, and we feel like these people that are on this path of love are a little dingy or whatever. But that final truth is the same. Knowing which nothing else remains to be known. Love that, loving which nothing else remains to be loved. And so I think this may seem a little idealistic. And so I thought I would read an account of someone who actually lived in this love. See, we all have this experience of love. Like I said, we project it onto something, we have this experience of love, and then it fades. And we think, how can you hold on to that? How can you live in love? Can you live in love? Can you live in a state of love all the time? Is it possible? This was found in the effects of a French priest in the 19th century. It's actually anonymous. It might not have been the priest who wrote it, but it's just said from the diary of an old man. But it is a beautiful spiritual experience of someone who actually, he was a devotee of Jesus, so Jesus was how he got there. Vedanta, as I already pointed out, says that part doesn't matter. If you call it Jesus or Krishna or Buddha, it doesn't really make much of a difference. So his chosen ideal was Jesus, and this was his experience. He says, Jesus has come to take up his abode in my heart. It is not so much a habitation, an association, as a sort of fusion. O new and blessed life, life which becomes each day more luminous. That is straight out of the Narada Bhakti Sutras. Narada Bhakti Sutras says that this divine love grows in intensity. Grows in intensity. Now compare that to the ordinary love. You have the little rush of love with the new car or the new sweetheart or whatever it is, and then it fades and you need a new sweetheart or a new car. This love is different. It grows in intensity. And then he says, there is a royal song of triumph in my heart because the Lord is there. It is always the same figure before me, always the same presence filling my heart. Always, at all times, growing in intensity, living in this condition. This is what he says. Formerly, the day was dulled by the absence of the Lord. I used to wake invaded by all sorts of sad impressions, and I did not find him on my path. Today, he is with me, and he is not merely making me a visit. It is no mere dazzling apparition, which may from one moment to another spread its wings and leave me in my night. He can depart only if he takes me with him. It is a permanent habitation. Think about that. You have this love within you that you're experiencing all the time that is growing in intensity. And you know that you cannot lose it unless it takes you with it, because it has been a fusion, as he says. More than that, he is not other than myself. He is one with me. It is not a juxtaposition. It is a penetration, a profound modification of my nature, a new manner of my being. This can be done. This wonderful ideal that seems so impossible and so far from the life that we live out there in this world. And so few people even think about, even make this their objective. How many people even try for this? As Sri Krishna says in the Gita, 1 in thousands. Nevertheless, it can be done. And so, as I said, the priest picked Jesus, and I indicated earlier that I thought Sri Ramakrishna was a really good choice because of this message of harmony and how much that would benefit our societal problems that we are experiencing right here, right now. There is one other message that I think I'd like to say before I quit here about this Sri Ramakrishna incarnation that I think is important. And that is universal salvation. Sri Ramakrishna preaches, like the early Christian church preached. I don't know if you know this, some of you probably do. There was a very influential church father named Origen of Alexandria who taught that everyone would be saved, including Satan. Everyone would eventually be saved. Now, in order to do this, of course, you need reincarnation. Reincarnation was there. He taught reincarnation and universal salvation. He was very influential around 200 AD or so. By 600 AD, he was declared a heretic and anathema, and all his teachings were buried. Actually, they'd been buried hundreds of years before. The Council of Nicaea. Generally, there were all these warring bishops. Probably some of you already know this. All these warring bishops that had very different ideas of what Christianity was. You know, we go to church now and we recite the Nicene Creed. Most Christians do that. And it's almost like, you know, you're a little kid and you pledge allegiance to the flag. You don't really know what you're saying. You know, what's pledge, allegiance? What do these words mean? And then you grow up saying this thing and you start, well, what's this and what's that? But you think, well, to believe this stuff, whatever I think about it, that's what it means to be a Christian. Well, it didn't used to mean that. And the fact is that that Nicene Creed is kind of the Treaty of Versailles, where you had all these warring factions with all these different ideas of Christianity. And the Nicene Creed dictated the terms of the winner to the losers. Every single sentence in that creed was hotly contested. We believe in one God. No, many Christians did not. With the creator of heaven, the Father, the Almighty, the creator of heaven and earth. No, many versions of Christianity thought that God was way too exalted to create this dirty little planet. And that he outsourced that to some lesser being called a demiurge. That was a fairly common belief in early Christianity. Every single sentence, you can go through and look it up on the internet, every single sentence in the Nicene Creed had major opponents who had very well thought out alternative beliefs. Anyway, in the Nicene Creed, they bent Constantine's ear and they got, that's now Christianity, essentially. Okay, so that was a digression. We have universal salvation. Sri Ramakrishna's message, he has, and also the Baha'is have universal salvation and also religious harmony. That's one of their messages too, I should say that. What does Sri Ramakrishna say? He says, all will surely realize God. All will be liberated. Very encouraging. It may be that some get their meal in the morning, some at noon, and some in the evening, but no one will go without food. All, without any exception, will certainly know their real self. So why is this so important? As I said in the beginning, we have so many people that have no interest in religion. They're pursuing all these other things out there. Maybe 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, universal salvation would have been a big deal because everybody was religious and this would have meant something. Now, people are watching news all day or whatever they're doing. They're not paying attention to religion. They don't maybe believe in heaven and hell after you die. They don't believe any of this stuff. And so why is this such an important message for right now? My feeling is that just as until we have realized the truth for ourselves, religion can be called an opinion. So also, until we realize the truth for ourselves, religion can be called a label. I label myself a Hindu. I label myself a Christian. I label myself a Buddhist. These clothes are a label. I label myself a monk. And so how many labels we have in the society? So many. There's the ordinary ones, there's the political labels, gender labels. Gender labels have gone bats. Now there's so many genders. I looked it up. I could keep track of a few. There, male, female, obvious, and there's non-binary and gender curious. And I looked it up on Google. I don't know every single one. It says there's 70 genders. And then, now you can have race and ethnicity are different. So you can have people of the same race having different ethnicities. And I tried to figure out what that meant, and I couldn't. I'm getting too old for this, and I just don't care. But, well, maybe I should. But here's the point. Whether you like this or not, whether you think this is a good idea or not, doesn't really matter. I've got my labels, you've got your labels. And we get possessive about our labels. My labels are sophisticated and cool, and your labels are not so good. Or your labels are threatening to me. I don't like your labels. And I think people with labels like you should be treated a certain way that, and whatever, it gets complicated. Why is this religious teaching of universal salvation so important? Because the truth is beyond labels. You cannot label the truth. We are going to a final existence that is one. That one has no label. These labels that we have are stages in our evolution. And as we have this universal salvation, so we are all heading to a truth without labels. And those of us who have labels, which is all of us basically, have to understand that these are passing. My labels, I like them. That's why they're mine. You like your labels. That's why they're yours. They're not a final destination. They are a bridge across which we are traveling to a final destination of no labels. How important is that for our society right now? To understand that these labels are a phase that we're going through. That we are all, no matter how superior we think our labels are to other people, we are one day going to give them all up just like they will. We are all traveling towards a truth without labels. And in the meantime, we can be kind to each other and understanding that as I suffer through my labels, so are you suffering through your labels. And that we are all on a journey to transcend these limitations, these labels that we see in ourselves and others. That message, I think, is essential for this age and this civilization. This label thing has bred such hostility. And so, I commend you to the care of Sri Ramakrishna. Because not only, as I said yesterday, this practice of yoga, and really it doesn't have to be meditation on him, it can be meditation on anything, but he encourages this practice of meditation to try and subdue the mind. That's what Yudhishthira said to the talking bird. The talking bird asked Yudhishthira, by subduing what do men escape grief? By subduing what do men escape grief? And Yudhishthira said, by subduing their minds. The mind must be subdued. If we allow it to roam, it will get into trouble. We must subdue the mind. And part of this practice of subduing the mind is looking sympathetically upon alternate labels and trying to accept the possibility that someone can arrive at an opinion which is opposed to yours through a set of life experiences that you have not had that is entirely reasonable and yet doesn't agree with you. This is possible. We have such different life experiences here. We have to try and broaden our ideas of acceptance. Possibly this person that I don't agree with has a legitimate reason through an alternate set of experiences that I do not understand. This is an idea that we have to try and entertain if we are going to have a cohesive society. And along the way, we can practice yoga and unselfishness and be happier, blessed people. And God help us, one day we'll wind up like this priest with a royal song of triumph sounding in our heart because the Lord is there, and knowing that that love can never leave us without taking us with it. May we all have that. May the good Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May he lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. May good betide all. May happiness come to all. May all see the face of truth and be fortified with the armor of love, goodwill, joy, and understanding. Peace, peace, peace. Peace be unto us. Peace be unto all. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Tat Sat. Okay, well, thank you all for coming. It's been a nice visit. I guess now we have Q&A.
Yes.
So yeah, you're free to ask a question. If you go to the bathroom, or if you're sick of this, you want to go home, that's fine. Yeah, let's, anyone start? Yes, hi.
I was thinking about when you were talking about everything is perfect all the time, and that Paul calls us to question. It's about our definition of perfection. And there was something you said about beauty as well, that I thought, well, it's about how we define these terms that determine what's perfect and what's not perfect.
Yeah, there's almost every argument boils down to how you define your terms. But for Vedanta, perfect means unchanging.
Okay.
Unchanging and infinite.
Okay.
To be imperfect is to change, and that which is perfect cannot change. And you say, gosh, I look around at this world, and what is there unchanging here? It's all changing. My moods, my mind, my body, it's all changing. Even the atoms. It's the third law of thermodynamics. They always keep moving. You can never stop moving. You can never reach absolute zero, which all motion stops. Everything is moving all the time, changing. What does Vedanta say? This world is false. Brahman alone is real. The Brahman Sat, Jagat Mitya. This is Maya, an illusion. The truth behind this reality is unchanging and perfect. And so, yes, we have to transcend this apparent world. As Sri Krishna says, devote yourself to me, practice yoga. Why? So that we can begin to perceive that unchanging, perfect reality behind this appearance that is changing and imperfect and frustrating. And as we practice yoga, we get a little tiny sense of that peace that passeth all understanding that Christ talked about. That is that peace that passeth all understanding. That awareness of the permanent, the perfect. And we get little tiny glimpses of it as we go, just enough to keep us on the path. And as I said yesterday with the big thing I put out, the big sheet of fringe benefits to yogic practice, I put that up to encourage us because, as I said, although there are a few exceptions, for the most part, this yogic journey to perfection is a marathon and not a sprint. And so we're going to need some fringe benefits along the way. So that's why I put up all those fringe benefits yesterday. If you weren't here, somebody probably has. Many people took pictures with their phones, or you can just, I'll just email it to you. You can get it that way. Anyway, so that's the answer. Perfect means unchanging, means basically this is the Matrix. Remember the movie, The Matrix? It's old now. The reality behind that. The reality, the unchanging reality behind the Matrix, basically. Good question. Yeah.
Two questions. One, could you tell us your email address? And two, as you got to know me this weekend, you probably figured out I come from Christian roots. Council Nicaea has always interested me. Was that around 300 AD?
323, yeah.
323. And what was the percentage vote for reincarnation? Do you know?
Oh, no, the question was which bishops, and that wasn't where reincarnation was decided. Reincarnation was decided actually in the Second Council of Constantinople, I think, Emperor Justinian. But that and the Nicene Creed doesn't say anything about reincarnation. For example, it says, we believe Jesus Christ suffered crucifixion and was buried and rose on the third day. And you think when you say this, why do we repeat this? We believe that he suffered. Why would you have to say that? I mean, they nailed his hands to a piece of wood. You have to believe that he suffered? Well, many people believe that he didn't. That's why. They said Christ was a perfected yogi. And in fact, they found in the Nag Hammadi library in Egypt in the 40s, well, they didn't really translate it until later, that a book called The Apocalypse of Peter, where Christ appears to Peter and says, they think they're crucifying me. They're not. Here I am. I'm fine. None of that. That's my body down there. That's not me. I'm here talking to you. There are actually a few lost gospels that have that storyline. So anyway, every single sentence in that Nicene Creed was hotly contested. Reincarnation isn't in there. That happened later with Justinian. But the answer to your question is that it wasn't done democratically. It was who got Constantine to agree. Who got Constantine, the bishops tried to sell their religion to Constantine. And whoever Constantine went with, that was the religion. Because back then, Christianity had such political influence, or religion, I should say, had such political influence. If the emperor believes in this religion, that's the law of the land. And now we've got this idea of separation. There was no concept of that back then. Religion was government. And so, to get your religion to the
Holy
emperor.
Roman Empire, as they're called, right?
Huh?
That's why they call it the Holy Roman Empire.
Right. Yeah.
Some changes, NICE and Creed.
Nicene, Nicene Creed. And the council is the Council of Nicaea.
Yeah.
NICEA, yeah.
And then-
323, yeah.
And then Swami Prabhupada, and then there's the one that you talked about. Is it, can you tell the translation of the
Yeah, the original Sanskrit is Bhaktya Ma. It means bhakti. He says to love is to know me. Did I write it down? I don't think I wrote down the Sanskrit. But anyway, the word is bhakti. So bhakti typically means devotion to the Lord. It doesn't mean, it means it's closer to love me is to know me. It's closer to that. But Swami P didn't translate it that way. He translated to love is to know me. And I think it's a valuable and subtle point that he brings out there. Because love is independent of the object of love. Love as independent of the object of love. If we can separate those two, which we have such trouble with in our lives, we think that I had a guy come to the desert. He'd been coming for a while, and he at one point he said why he was coming. I can't remember how it came up, but he wanted to meet a woman so he could fall in love and get married. He was going to meet his wife at these meditation retreats we were having. And so I asked him, why do you want to meet a wife? Well, he wants to fall in love and get married, have kids. I said, so what you really want is to fall in love. He didn't have these ideas separated in his mind. That love, to fall in love was to find a wife. That's what that was. There was no difference. That's funny. That was actually a cause of divorce. I know a woman who, she was so frustrated with her husband's machinations over money. He kept like money all the time, drove her crazy. Finally, she said, Frank, what would you rather be, rich or happy? Immediately, he said rich. Didn't think. There was no happiness without rich. It had no meaning. Without money, there could be no happiness. Without a wife, there can be no love. This is the idea. So yeah, that's why I like Swami Prabhupada's translation so much, is that there's this idea that we can have love without an object. Love without an object is divine. We take this divinity, this love that we have within us, that we sense within us, we project it onto a new computer or a new car or a new romance. This is my love. This is my love. This is my love. And then we have all kinds of complications and problems. Yeah.
Here we say spiritualism is a matter of the heart. and the
Spiritualism,
knowledge-
spiritual,
Spiritual practice.
Oh,
is a
okay,
matter of
alright.
the heart, because the knowledge seems to get in the way at all these times. If I'm reaching out to, like my Ishta is divine mother, it's through the heart, that's it.
well, that's what I liked about this verse so much. To love is to know me. They are the same. To love is to know me. Why are they the same? Do we see it? If you love something, there's me loving, there's love connecting us, and there's the thing. Three things. Love, lover, and beloved. If I know something, same thing. I am the knower, there's the thing, and I know it, connecting. Knowledge, knower, and known. Now, as the love increases, what happens? Like I talked about today and yesterday, you forget yourself, you forget the object of your love, and it all becomes one blissful, indescribable experience.
That ego tends to dissolve,
Huh?
the ego tends to dissolve.
Yeah, your ego, your awareness of the other, all this is fused into one blissful experience. Now, how would you distinguish that unity from a unity of knowledge, where the knower, the known, and knowledge become one? You have concentrated your mind so thoroughly on this object that there is no longer any difference between you and the object.
You would start identifying everything with the divine.
There's no thing. Once those three come together, there is just one. There is no thing to analyze or talk about because that's gone now. So that one, where knowledge, knower, and known become one, how can you distinguish that one from the one where lover, beloved, and love become one? They are one. There's one. That's it. And so that is how this path of knowledge and this path of love are one. And Sri Krishna says to love is to know me. That bliss of love, not to love any particular thing, but that bliss of love is knowledge of God. Beautiful thought, isn't it? That blissful feeling of love is knowledge of God. And we've all had these little tiny glimpses in our lives. Yeah, good question. Yeah.
Question from the audience. One of them is non-duality not a label? How is that different from non-binary?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. Is non-duality not a label?
No, of course it's a label, yeah.
And how is that different from non-binary?
Well, non-binary specifically refers to gender, right? Non-duality refers to you could say it refers to oneness, but the reason they don't call it oneness is that you don't have an idea of one without two.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't call it monism, they call it non-dualism. If they called it monism, there would be this idea of dualism by contrast, so they refer to it as non-dualism instead of monism. So that really means a sort of final oneness, whereas non-binary is particular to gender studies. That's my understanding of the term anyway. Yeah.
Thanks for the help. Question about sort of the superimposition of our internal love on external objects. What is the practice there? Because naturally, when we see like our dog or our family members, we get that love welling up. The practice just to redirect our minds to what we're experiencing isn't necessarily the object in front of us, but that one manifesting is that the
That's a
practice?
great question.
Yeah, it is.
It's
Very practical.
yeah, very practical, and I confess that what you suggested is a little abstract for everyday use. Okay, so what he's asking, that's good. I'm glad you asked me to repeat it. It makes me clarify in my mind. How do we practice this idea of objectless love? You love your dog. You see your dog. You're happy to see your dog. What do you do in practice when you see your dog and you love your dog? Do you remind yourself, it's not actually the dog that I love, it's this wonderful feeling of love that I have? Is that what you do in everyday experience? You see your wife or your son or whatever, and you think, So it's not actually the son, it's just this love thing that and it says that in the Upanishads, right? The husband loves the wife, not for the sake of the wife, but for the sake of the indwelling self of the wife. So that is the teaching. On the other hand, practically speaking, how do we implement this? That's the question. And Sri Ramakrishna had this devotee who came to him. She was trying to meditate and she couldn't do it, like all of us. And she said, he said, well, what's the problem? Why, what's stopping you from meditating? And she said, well, I have this nephew. And every time I go to meditate, I think of her chosen ideal is Krishna. And she sits down to meditate and she just thinks, well, I have to do this for my nephew and that for my nephew. And what's he doing? Where is he? All the things we think about. And Sri Ramakrishna says, that's wonderful. Here's what you do. You imagine that Krishna is your nephew, and then you go and serve your nephew as the boy Krishna. So you deify the object of your love. That's his solution. My dog is an embodiment of the Divine Mother or God or whatever. So is my husband, wife, spouse, whatever it is. So yeah, that is the practical teaching, to see that this is the Lord in this manifestation right in front of me right now. I tell you from my own personal experience, this is not nearly as easy to do as it sounds. It sounds simple and it is not. Because I lived with my quadriplegic mother in the Mojave Desert, in the ashram there, and the obvious thing to do was to serve her as Holy Mother. It was clear in my mind. There's no other way to approach this situation you've been given with your mother. You're a monk and you're teaching, or living in this ashram and having these meditation groups. You have to treat your mother as Holy Mother. And she's quadriplegic. It means I get her out of bed, I get her to the bathroom, I do all these things, every day and every night, all these things you do. Well, you're rolling up her support hose and it's Holy Mother's leg. I mean, you have to think this way. It's very obvious that this is what to do. Very difficult, because it's my mother right in front of me. It doesn't look like Holy Mother. I've got a history with this person. And to just say, oh, now she's Holy Mother, well, it's a challenge. So I'm not saying this is easy, but it is practical. Yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah.
You're saying love without an object. But we are usually love, say, Krishna, and that's object. And if you start meditation without that object, how you do it?
Well, no, you're absolutely right. There are meditations where you start without an object, and Sri Krishna himself says these are very difficult for embodied beings to realize. So it's basically a simplification for people like us in the situation we're in. As Sri Ramakrishna says, it is all water, whether it is ice or liquid. Solid or liquid, it is all water. Sri Krishna, you can look upon as the solidified form of that one non-dual Brahman. That's the way to look at it. But we don't have to do that. You don't have to keep that in your mind as you meditate on Sri Krishna. That's the grace of the incarnation. That is why they come. Yeah. That you look unsatisfied.
Focus.
What?
In meditation, we are focusing something.
Yeah.
With an object, so
Yeah.
that at least initial stage.
Right.
I'm not staying in your stage.
No, I'm very much in that initial stage. Yeah.
So then that should be a practice to focus on something.
Yeah.
Object.
Right.
That should be the practice, not without an object. With an object.
Oh, yeah. I mean, eventually, this is the highest goal. The highest goal is non-dualism, right? But yes, to start there, as Sri Ramakrishna says, first, when I teach archery, he says, first I tell people to aim at a banana tree, then at the wick of a candle, then at a flying bird. So first, we're all in banana tree school here. We're all aiming at the banana tree, basically. After we get done with the banana tree, we move up to other things. We try, and it is said that once you actually recognize that chosen ideal in your own heart, you see it in all hearts. To love one is to love all. Loving me, there is nothing more to love, as we said. Knowing me, there is nothing more to know. So once you know that Lord reveals himself to you in his personal and impersonal aspects. They are aspects of that infinite being. Sri Ramakrishna compares it to ice and water. but they are both personal or impersonal, ice, water, whatever you want to call it. They are aspects of that one infinite being. Get there however you can, through form or formlessness, makes no difference. Once you're there, then you have that understanding. This is all one. You know, Sri Ramakrishna gives the illustration of the steps and the roof, where you climb the steps to get to the roof. And you do that by rejecting each step behind you. And then once you get to the roof, you realize that the roof is made of the same material as the steps were. It's all one. But you cannot have this real, and then he says you can, once you get to the roof, you can even dance there. You can do whatever you want. But once we don't have that awareness, that vision, that opening up, that wisdom, until we get to that experience. Once we get to the roof, we focus the mind on the chosen ideal, we have that experience of love, then we see that love, they say, you know, I haven't done this myself, I'm just telling you what they say. Then we see that that love is within all of us, and that love is the governing power of this universe, that everybody does everything through love all the time. And we find, they say, that we see this mine of love and joy inside the heart of each person, and we feel that the suffering they are going through is so incredibly unnecessary that our hearts just explode in compassion. This is what they say. So once you have that awareness of Krishna or Buddha, Jesus, whatever, you see it in your heart, you see it in all hearts, and you see how needless the suffering is of the human race. And this is what explains the behavior of the saints. They want to come to us and help us because they see that we are so needlessly tormenting ourselves. Beautiful.
Let me just say something real quick. I just want to let everybody know that's worried about Swami getting lunch and getting all.
Yeah, forget it. We
and
can
all
just
that.
do this. Yeah.
We talked about it before the talk. He'd rather sit here and talk to everybody and have a casual conversation, and we'll pack him. He's gonna get to the airport way early. His plane doesn't leave until 3:44. Right. So even though, you know, we're trying to get him out at 12 o'clock because of the past airport stress, he'll have plenty of time. We'll pack him a lunch, so don't worry about it.
And thankfully, thankfully she blew it with the biscuits on the first try this morning, so we had a late breakfast. So I'm actually not that hungry because we had a late breakfast. The second round of biscuits were delicious, but it came later.
So don't worry about. Take your time and enjoy our opportunity to have a conversation with Swami. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Swami, I was really fascinated how you explain to kind of feel devoted and become love without, you know, sort of having embodied, like, okay, but my mind says that so much action outside I see happening everywhere, and even though, so there's something I feel that is so unjust, unreasonable, destroying, killing, all that. Do I still say that is like part of the divinity? Do I feel that is part of the just love in a say that this is supposed to be? I mean, karma might answer, but still, how do I feel all about that? And I still want to be, you know, part of the spirit. I want to be devotional. I want to feel divinity within me, but it's sometimes struggle.
So if I understand, we're worried that this is perhaps going to make us callous to the sufferings of others. Is that what I'm hearing? So the idea is that I can dismiss the sufferings of other people because Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, this is all Brahman and it's all, or maybe it's all Maya and it's all unreal. Maybe that's what I'm thinking. You know, we have to be true to ourselves. We have to admit the reality that we perceive. You know, there is this wonderful story where Swami Brahmananda talks to Swami Prabhavananda, and he says, there are times when my mind soars so high that I see God playing behind so many masks. I look at this person and I see God in the mask of a thief, God in the mask of a liar, God in the mask of all these things. He says, I see this. And he says, at such times, it becomes impossible for me to teach. Because how can God teach God? That's what he said, right? And then what happens? His mind comes down from that level and he says, I see your ignorance and I try to remove it. When my mind comes down from this level and I perceive your ignorance, then I try to remove it. Now, we're perceiving the ignorance all the time, basically. We cannot pretend to be on this high level where we see God playing behind so many masks. If it is not our perception, we must be true to our perception. We cannot be hypocritical. So what we see, at least this is the life that we see before us, of these people who have actually realized this. When their mind comes back down to this level, they act in a sort of commonsensical way. I see this person suffering, I will do something about it. I don't just dismiss it because it's all the play of Maya, unless I'm in that high exalted state. And then when we're in that high exalted state, I think, I don't know, that we are such a blessing to this world that we don't have to do anything. The love and the joy that we radiate in these higher states of consciousness, I think, is a balm and a salve and a healing vibration that we put out, and you don't need to go give them a sandwich if they're starving or whatever it is, because you're radiating something so much better than that. But that's when we're in these higher states of consciousness. Precious few of us get there. The rest of us are stuck here, and we have to act like good people. Religion says be good, do good, be unselfish, be giving, give of yourself, give of your time, give of your money. That's why we hate religion, as I said in the beginning, because it says all these things that you don't want to do, start doing them. And all these fun things that you're doing, stop doing them. That's what religion says. We don't want to do that. That's where we began. We're still stuck with that. That didn't go anywhere until we reached the roof. And then there is no more struggle. Why? Because we are so full of love and joy that we have no self-interest. Now you can know that from your own experience. These moments of love that we have had in our lives, these blessed moments of love. Think back when you fell in love, or you were just the first day you got the new car, you fell in love with a new sweetheart or whatever it was. Was there any sense of calculation in your mind? How much am I going to give to this person? You wanted to give more. You wanted to give and give and give because love gives. Love does not take. And so we have this experience. We know this. And so once we reach that level, like this priest in this talk, who actually had this royal song of triumph sounding in his heart because the Lord was there. If we are living in that consciousness, there is no fear of selfish behavior. I'll tell you my personal experience of this. This was 1995, I guess. Yeah, I think that's right. I had the blessed fortune of touching the feet of Holy Mother's last living monastic disciple. He was in Portland and he was dying. And I went there. I was a grad student at UCLA, and I went there, and I wasn't in a very good place mentally, I would say. I was kind of slacking off in my practice a little bit, and I'd say I was a little, not exactly cynical, but my heart was kind of dry. And I went, and he had a personal attendant, Mr. Thomas, who had a hernia, and he was an old man. He's dead now, and he needed a break. And it just so happened, after years of his service, my Christmas break just happened at UCLA, and I could go up there and give personal service to this incredible last living disciple of Holy Mother in Portland for my Christmas break. It was like this gift from God. So I went up there to do this in this kind of, I'm happy for the opportunity, but at the same time, I'm not in a very good place. After 3 weeks of service to this man, I don't think he intentionally did anything, but just the vibration of being near him completely transformed me. It elevated my mind to a place that I didn't know was possible. What happened in that state? What happened? I remember there was something going on in the monastery, and I had this royal thing, whatever you call it, this heart full. I had the heart full. It didn't last. You can see I'm not that anymore, but I had it for a while. The heart was full. Something came up in the kitchen in the monastery. I don't remember what it was, but I remember thinking, mind thoughts, I don't want to do that. I don't want to get involved with that. And there was this joy, this love that just pushed out, I'll do it. I volunteered for it. And the mind said, who said that? I didn't want to do this. Who said that? And it happened again, something else. They asked me some question about something, and the mind started to calculate, how am I going to answer this question? And this, I felt this. The love and the joy pushed out the simple truth. And I said to myself the same thing. Who said that? Where's this coming from? It is impossible. And after that, I became a normal person again after I went back to Los Angeles, back to the graduates program, and eventually crashed. But for this Christmas break, I had this wonderful experience that I can't forget. Whatever experience you have, you do the spiritual life, you'll get something, whether it's from contact with an illumined soul or just a good meditation or a nice scripture reading, whatever it is, you get this elevation. You cannot forget it. You may try to put the blinders back on, and you can't really do it. Once you know this, you can't unknow it. You're stuck with it. And you know that there's nothing else out there that can compete with this. And so I'm almost done. And so that love, that joy, when we have it, when we really are in a higher state of consciousness, there is no possibility of error. There's no possibility of, you can try. I tried to do the wrong thing and failed. And so if we have that heart full of love, we can't go wrong. We just have to get that. I got a little taste and now it's gone, and I got to go back and get it myself, as do the rest of us. We've got to do the work. But that's another great thing, especially for those of us who are here, this message of universal salvation, it is going to happen. We are all going to have this experience as our baseline at some point. Beautiful thoughts, beautiful thoughts. Imagine that. That's your baseline. And it gets better and better as this priest says. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have this experience often that basically like you go with your heart and let the mind be just an instrument of where you're going, and it always generally takes you in the absolutely right direction.
Agreed. And what stops you? Fear, self-interest. Yeah.
Self-interest is all in the ego and the head.
Right.
And which comes and says, oh, no, don't.
Yeah. What about this? What about that?
As soon as that
What about
comes
me?
to I'm saying,
Yeah.
I'm going to go against it because I know this is taking me somewhere. And it has never, ever been that. If I'm like, go ahead and do this.
Amen. Yes.
Is following your heart the same thing as following your intuition, or?
Hard to say. I'm not sure what you mean by intuition. I would say follow your heart, and if that means intuition, okay. I don't know what intuition means, really. That's the thing. He says he follows his heart. I think what he said is actually a pretty good sort of compass for pointing you in the right direction, which is that if it is unselfish and giving,
you're almost eliminating the ego.
Yeah, if it is contrary to, as a good rule of thumb, what Swami Vivekananda said, if it is unselfish, it is religion. And if it is selfish, it is not religion. That's a pretty good way to measure what to do next. The thing is, that's back to religion telling us to do unfun things that we don't want to do. We want to do selfish things that are fun. We don't want to do self-sacrificing things, unselfish things that seem like they're contrary to our comfort level. So that's the thing that we have to learn to overcome. And what we want to do is we want to be told that the things we like to do and are fun are holy. That's what we want to hear. We don't want to hear that the things that we like to do and are fun are not holy and should be given up. We want to hear that the things we like to do and are fun are holy and pure and are making us better. That's what we want to hear. As Swami Vivekananda said, you cannot give religion to a thief unless you tell him that stealing is holy. If you tell him that stealing is holy, you've got a religious thief. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. We are all, in a sense, in that boat. We may not be thieves, but we've got our coping mechanisms and we don't want to give them up. We want to be told that they are pure and holy and good, and that they are advancing our spiritual agenda. Well, I haven't seen it. So, we like to think it's my intuition or whatever, but, frequently it's not really what we want to do, so I don't know. You have to be honest with yourself and figure it out. Yeah. Okay, one more. We had enough. What time is it?
Can you please repeat Swami Prabhavananda's non-Sanskrit translation of that love sentence?
To love is to know me, my innermost nature, the truth that I am. It's in his Bhagavad Gita book.
Oh.
It's it's a beautifully poetic translation. It's great for bedtime reading. If you want a Bhagavad Gita that you got to sit at a desk with a pencil or computer and study, commentary and all that. Nikhil-Nanda's is pretty good. Is it Gambhirananda? Yeah, Gambhirananda also is pretty good. Those are difficult. If you want something that you can read and understand quickly, Swami Prabhavananda's Gita is very good. Another one that's really good is Chidbhavananda's Gita. We talked about that yesterday? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I love that when you said that Arjuna was talking about someone on the mount and Krishna was talking against. I have always thought about, Bhagavad Gita in Hinduism, we worship as a very important religious text, but I think Krishna tells Arjuna is going to kill your kith and kin and make sure that they're all dead. Because that is what he is a basic message, and he is making Arjuna emboldened to do that. I mean, it looks like a very cruel act to do.
Well, we have to understand it's all metaphorical, right? I mean, this is all the battle for your mind. This battle of the Kurukshetra, the field is your mind. And the 5 Pandava brothers are your 5 good habits. And the 100 Kurus are your 100 evil habits. And you want to think that all those evil habits are good. Just like we said, I want to be told that stealing is holy. That's what I want to be told. And I should show mercy to my habit of stealing. I don't want to fight my habit of stealing. It's my friend. It has been with me for so long. Krishna, I want to practice nonviolence with my bad habits. That's basically what he's saying. And Krishna said, this is a bunch of baloney. Go out there and fight. So the whole thing has to be understood as a metaphor. Yeah.
So in other words, Swami, I can do only thing is to keep my good feeling, sanity. I can just keep sending out good vibrations to those unjust things I feel, see, and hear. Seems to me that's more comforting to me.
So you want to send out good vibrations. You're sending, I mean, yes, send out good vibrations always, all the time. But what is the question? I didn't quite catch it.
Oh, question, I was saying that all this action going everywhere now is so disturbing sometimes. And when you want to feel that, why this is all happening everywhere? And what is this a God's play? Is it something, it's just a part of the human existence?
Yeah, as Sri Ramakrishna says, we will never know this. A 1-seer pot cannot hold 4 seers of milk. Even in that book of Ecclesiastes that I was quoting, King Solomon says, no one knows what God has done from beginning to end. In that very chapter, he says. So this is something also that it's intuitively obvious. We can't understand this whole universe. I mean, even physically, what do we have? 30%, no, what is it now? 70% of the universe is dark energy, and something like 25 or 26% is dark matter. Basically means 95 or 96% of the universe, we don't know what the heck it is. We don't know what those are bookkeeping terms that we use to explain stuff that we can't otherwise explain. They don't mean anything. Nobody's ever seen any of this stuff. It's just something we say because we don't know what it is. Dark means I don't know. And so 96% of this universe is I don't know physically. And we think that we're going to understand God's actions in this world. Well, we're not. So, at these times when these things happen to us, I mean, my feeling is that I'm a simple bhakta and I just pray. I pray for the welfare of others. I pray you know, for me, there's two kinds of prayer. There's the kind of prayer that comes spontaneously like that. And then there's the kind of prayer that comes when I'm trying to think of what to pray for. You understand the difference? Somebody says, I'm going to have an operation next Tuesday, pray for me. And I think, okay, what am I going to say? You know, I mean, I don't know, should she get a good operation or not? Or should she be out of pain? Or should she, you know, she has something that she has to learn through this, and I don't know what it is. What am I going to pray for? I pray for her to learn that. I pray for her to learn that painlessly. There's so many things you can pray for. You can think about, what am I going to pray for? And then there's the kind of prayer that just occurs to you. You're sitting in the shrine meditating, and then the thought, you saw some image on the television of some, you know, wounded soldier or some other situation, and it touched your heart, and it comes back up in the shrine. When you're actually, you know, you're trying to think of your chosen ideal or watch your breath or whatever you're trying to do, and you have this image come back in your mind of something that moved you. Clearly, it's a time to pray for that. Surround it with light. Imagine it full of love. Send it joy, whatever you can do. So I think that in those moments when some disturbing image or information comes back into your mind, yes, that's absolutely a time to try and offer it. It's another way to do it is offer it at the feet of your chosen ideal. You know, so many options are there. But those kinds of, I mean, it's sort of a samskar in a certain way that just bubbles up in your mind. Yeah, I think those are best offered to the Lord. That's my feeling. You know, it's just my personal practice. Yeah, but it's tricky. I mean, that's something you have to do again and again. Yeah. You guys had enough? No, one more? Okay.
Not really a question, but I don't know if you remember back in the day, they had those bracelets, the WWJD, what would Jesus do?
Yeah, we talked about this at the table yesterday. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that just reminded me, like, it's just a way of reminding you to do from the heart the unselfish thing. Do before you react or do something, think about that and then do it.
I saw a bumper sticker that said, "What would Kali do?" That's pretty good. Yeah.
Well, as you said, 95% of the universe is something unknown, so that's all mine.
The other 5% is also her.
Also, yes, he's just showing only 5%.
Okay, so we're good? Have we had enough? I think we have. Okay.
Please come back.
Om Purnamidam Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From Brahman flows all that is. From Brahman all, yet is he still the same. Om, peace, peace, peace. So it's been a pleasure, you guys. I've enjoyed meeting you. It's been nice staying here. The food is good. The weather's nice. It's a nice place you have. Okay.